The winter of 1587 was bitter in England, and inside Fotheringhay Castle, a deeper chill lingered. For 19 years, Mary Stuart, once Queen of Scots, had been a prisoner, her world reduced to guarded rooms and intercepted letters. She had fled to England seeking refuge from her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I, but found only captivity. To English Catholics, Mary was a symbol, a martyr in waiting, a legitimate claimant to the throne. This made her dangerous, a living threat to Elizabeth and her Protestant realm. The years of captivity only enhanced her stature among supporters, turning her into a religious icon. Mary arrived in England in 1568, a deposed monarch of 25. Now, at 44, she was weakened by illness, her famous auburn hair streaked with gray. Yet her royal spirit remained unbroken. She carried herself with dignity, never letting her captors forget her lineage. The end of her long imprisonment was near, but it would not be of her choosing. The air in Fotheringhay was thick with tension. Every sound seemed to herald the inevitable. Mary knew her time was short. She had been tried and condemned. The warrant for her execution was signed. All that remained was the final grim ceremony. The castle was no longer just her prison. It was to be her stage. Here, the fate of one queen, decided by another, would be sealed in blood. The world was watching, waiting for the final scene to unfold. The last act of Mary Stuart's life was about to begin. The story of Mary and Elizabeth was one of two queens bound by blood, divided by fate. Both were granddaughters of Henry VII, and this shared ancestry gave Mary a powerful claim to the English throne. For Elizabeth, Mary was a perpetual shadow, her legitimacy questioned by Catholics who saw Mary as the rightful queen. Their lives ran parallel, but never crossed in person. Their relationship was conducted through letters and envoys. Elizabeth was cautious and pragmatic. Mary, passionate and impulsive. England was rocked by Catholic plots to depose Elizabeth and place Mary on the throne. Elizabeth resisted calls for Mary's execution for years, knowing the precedent it would set. Her advisors, especially Sir Francis Walsingham, saw Mary as a threat that had to be eliminated. Elizabeth was caught between sparing her cousin and risking her own life, or executing her and staining her reign. In the end, she chose what she believed would secure her kingdom. The decision was agonizing, but the pressure was relentless. The fate of both queens was now inextricably linked to this terrible choice. The final chapter began with the Babington Plot, a conspiracy to assassinate Elizabeth and place Mary on the throne. Sir Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth's spy master, intercepted secret letters between Mary and the conspirators. The plotters believed their messages were secure, hidden in beer barrels, but Walsingham's agents read every word. He allowed the plot to unfold, gathering evidence until Mary, in a letter, seemed to endorse the plan and Elizabeth's assassination. Whether Mary was manipulated or complicit remains debated, but for Walsingham, it was enough. The conspirators were arrested and executed, a brutal warning to others. Mary was moved to Fotheringhay Castle and put on trial before a commission of noblemen and judges. A queen, anointed by God, was to be tried by her subjects, an unprecedented event. The machinery for her destruction was now fully in motion. The evidence was damning, and the outcome inevitable. The trap had been sprung. Mary's fate was sealed. The state turned its full attention to the captive queen. The end was near. Mary's trial at Fotheringhay Castle was a formality. She refused to recognize the court's authority, insisting she was a queen, not a subject. Eventually, she defended herself, pointing out the weaknesses in the evidence and the manipulation of her words. Alone, without counsel, she faced the most powerful men in England. Her eloquence moved some, but the verdict was never in doubt. She was found guilty of imagining the Queen's death. Parliament demanded Elizabeth carry out the sentence. Elizabeth agonized, delaying for weeks, tormented by the decision. She even hinted at a private assassination, but her keeper refused. Under immense pressure, Elizabeth finally signed the death warrant. She later claimed she hadn't meant for it to be dispatched so quickly, shifting blame to her secretary. But the deed was done. The warrant was sent to Fotheringhay. The final act was set in motion. February 8, 1587, dawned cold and gray. The Earls of Shrewsbury and Kent woke Mary and read her the death warrant. Her execution was set for 8 a.m. Mary received the news with calm, saying she was ready to die for her faith. She requested a Catholic priest for last rites but was denied. Only the Protestant dean was offered, whom she refused. Mary comforted her weeping servants, distributing keepsakes and asking for prayers. She dressed with deliberate care, a black satin gown, black mantle, widow's veil, crucifix, and rosary beads. Beneath her mourning robes, she concealed a secret, a final statement. She would not go to her death as a criminal, but as a queen and a Catholic martyr. In the great hall below, 300 witnesses gathered. The stage was set for her final appearance. Every detail was chosen for symbolism. Mary's composure stunned her captors. She was ready. The clock was ticking. The world would soon witness the end of Mary, Queen of Scots. Her final journey was about to begin. The last preparations were made. The moment had come. At the appointed hour, the High Sheriff summoned Mary. She took her crucifix and prayer book, beginning her final walk. Only 2 ladies-in-waiting and 4 male servants were allowed to accompany her. As she entered the great hall, the crowd fell silent. A black-draped scaffold awaited, with the executioner and his assistant. Mary mounted the steps, her face resolute. The Dean of Peterborough began a Protestant sermon, but Mary interrupted, declaring her Catholic faith. She prayed aloud in Latin, ignoring the Dean's haranguing. The Earl of Kent ordered the Dean to stop. Mary knelt before the block, her final moments her own. The preparations were complete. The executioner stepped forward. Mary's ladies wept as they helped her remove her black mantle, revealing a crimson petticoat, the color of Catholic martyrdom. It was a final defiant act. She would die as a martyr, not a traitor. Jane Kennedy blindfolded her queen. Mary knelt, positioned her head on the block, and recited her final words. "Into your hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit." She repeated the prayer 3 times, her voice steady. The witnesses watched in awe and horror. The executioner, visibly nervous, asked for forgiveness. Mary replied, "I forgive you with all my heart." Those were her last words. The assistant held her down. The executioner took his position. The axe was raised. The silence was absolute. The end was seconds away. The first blow missed, striking the back of Mary's head. A groan escaped her lips. The crowd recoiled in horror. The execution was meant to be swift, but became a gruesome ordeal. The second blow cut deep, but did not sever her head. The executioner, desperate, hacked at the remaining flesh. With a third, clumsy motion, the head was finally severed. He lifted the head by its hair, crying, "God save Queen Elizabeth!" The head fell from his grasp. The hair was a wig. Mary's gray head rolled on the blood-soaked stage. The illusion of royalty was shattered. The crowd was stunned into silence. The dignity of the moment was destroyed. The witnesses were left with a scene of brutal, ugly death. From beneath Mary's skirts, her little dog Gedden emerged, covered in blood. A final image of loyalty and grief. The aftermath was managed with cold efficiency. Everything touched by Mary's blood was burned to prevent relics. Her body was wrapped in cloth, her head and body embalmed, and eventually buried in Peterborough Cathedral. Later, her son James moved her remains to Westminster Abbey near Elizabeth's tomb. Elizabeth reacted with fury and grief, blaming her secretary for the warrant's dispatch. How much was genuine, how much political theater is unknown. The execution outraged Europe, but the deed was done. Mary's death secured the Protestant succession and paved the way for James to unite the crowns. Her tragic end ensured her legacy as a romantic, martyred figure. Through courage and defiance, Mary seized control of her narrative. She lost her life, but gained immortality. The shadow she cast would linger for centuries. The story of Mary, Queen of Scots, was complete.